This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's also mention Jim Hurd. We talked about him when we first started talking about WCW, but he comes up in Terry's book and he brings up a conversation that he was having with Dick Murdoch when Hurd comes by and asks Murdoch, "Hey, what's wrong with the company?" Which I guess Hurd would solicit advice all the time, like, "Hey, what would you do?" And just looking for input. Well, supposedly, as the legend goes in Terry's book, Murdoch answered, "Well, Jim, it's you. You don't know a goddamn thing about this business." And that was an opinion shared by a lot of folks in the locker room, but I don't know that a lot of folks just said it straight up to him. Do you remember this story?
I remember the story. I didn't hear it. I wasn't a witness to it, but I could certainly see it happening. But that was Murdoch, outspoken, and Murdoch probably in his own unique way was trying to help Hurd.
Right.
You know, maybe you should back out of the day to day and the creative, because that was probably one of Mr. Hurd's biggest downfalls, was trying to get involved in creative, and that was a mistake, quite frankly. I mean, you know, we got the illustrations, we got the evidence, hunchbacks, ding dongs, some of that shit. Ric Flair getting a haircut, all these things. He wanted to be so involved in the creative that I think it was a negative, not a positive.
Let's talk about 1989, because that's really the next time we see him on a major stage. He's going to take a little bit of a break from wrestling, try his hand at some acting, do Roadhouse and some other things. And then eventually Jim Hurd reaches out to him in 89 about bringing him in. And when I saw that in the research, I thought, well, boy, that's got JR's fingerprints all over it. What can you tell us about Terry Funk coming into World Championship Wrestling in 89?
Well, you know, I talked to Hurd about a lot of things, and because again, you know the dynamic there, the booking committee and all that stuff. Well, as soon as 3:30 or 4 o'clock came, those guys are on planes to Charlotte or wherever, getting home, and so that would leave me with Mr. Hurd, which I didn't mind, quite frankly. You know, we had good conversations about football and sometimes about wrestling. But I told him that I thought that Terry could help us, and I thought he could help the roster, not just a match. I said, and plus he's got a great way of booking himself. He understands what he can do, what he can't do. He'll do a believable angle, and I think he's a fresh face, and he's got a great name, great reputation. And at that time, you know, we were honoring the NWA title a little bit more, and he's a former champion. So, but Terry exceeded what I perceived he might do when it came to WCW at that point in time. He over delivered, in my opinion.
Let's talk about how we bring him back creatively. He's doing commentary with you at Clash of the Champions for Steamboat versus Flair, the classic match from the Superdome. How was Terry to work with in the color commentary role?
Loved it. I loved it. It was a new adventure for him. It was a new challenge, Conrad. You know, it's like, you know, you're getting so involved in broadcasting because of the shows that you do with your roster of misfits, including me, that it's fun when you get to do a shot like you did on the A&E thing with the Flair robe. It's fun when you're, I'm Conrad Thompson, your host of that dark side stuff, and which is good. So you get the itch a little bit. You kind of get this. I think I can do that. It's another place to go. So I think that's kind of where Terry was. It was he had done commentary for a match or whatever, but we did the whole pay-per-view or the whole Clash or whatever it may be. And I love working with him. I really did. He used the same logic, the same skill set. He's a great talker. He knew how to get talent over. And he wasn't like so many pro wrestlers who become or want to become a commentator, but they're still very much prioritizing their words to get themselves over.
Yeah.
And that was not Terry. Terry got the talent over, And coming from an NWA champion, former NWA champion, Hall of Fame level guy, made sense, and people believed it. And as his partner, I wanted to make sure that I would give him any kind of ringing endorsement I could that this is coming from a former NWA champion, and that means a lot in our world, and it did mean a lot in our world. So he was fun to work with, fun as hell. But he did that. We approached. We went over things like how to get in and out of a segment, Conrad. But in the middle, like after the bell rang, so to speak, it was all ad lib, and it worked out really well in that respect. I love working with him. I'd work with him again if I had an opportunity.
Well, we know that eventually it's going to be announced that Terry Funk is going to be one of 3 judges at Wrestle War 89. As a reminder, we've got a bit of a controversy. This is the middle of the trilogy. In Chicago, Funk picks up the win. He becomes the world champion, but there is a second referee involved. So they schedule the rematch at the Clash. It was poorly promoted. The quote unquote booker gets shown the door as a result of how poor the attendance was, but it is one hell of a long match. And now it's time. Oh, there's a little controversy. Was Flair's leg under the rope? Wasn't it? So now it's the war to settle the score at Wrestle War 89 in Nashville. But we wanted to make sure that we have a definitive winner. So we're not just going to rely on the referees. If this thing comes down to a draw, we're going to have a winner because we've got 3 judges at ringside: Lou Thez, Pat O'Connor, and Terry Funk.
Not bad.
Buddy, this has your fingerprints all over it. Am I wrong?
No. Again, we're trying to add credibility to the core product of pro wrestling. And I mean, that'd be like doing baseball. Okay, we got Mantle, we got Gehrig, we got Babe Ruth. I think we have our hitters lined up. I think we're good. And I thought the same thing about this deal. Lou is such a iconic figure, and so affiliated with the NWA including on a global basis. Pat O'Connor from New Zealand, had his run back in the 60s. But he was available and he was accessible, and he look, these guys all wanted a booking. They all got paid. They got a payday. They were booked. And so I thought it was great. I really enjoyed what we did there, but I was not aware of all the intricacies of the post-match. Steamboat and Flair go out and have another classic. Those some bitches could not have a bad match ever that I ever saw. But boy, the post-match was magnificently historic, without a doubt.
The post-match is really something else. As you know, Flair's going to beat Steamboat. Terry Funk interrupts your interview with Flair and asks him for a title shot. Flair, who's now babyface, says, well, Terry, you're not really in the top 10, and the NWA has the top 10. Funk snaps. He puts Flair on the floor, tries to pile drive him through a ringside table. It doesn't break, but it is an early, table spot and a huge angle at the time. I assume this was some of your creative. Was Flair involved? What can you tell us about this?
No, it wasn't my creative. I was surprised that it even happened. I knew they were going to do something post-match. And generally for me, my work would be better if I didn't know every little detail. Because what happens is that you precondition yourself as to what you're told will happen. Then something comes up that you got to call an audible. And if you're so conditioned to what's going on, now you're processing, oh, this screwed up. I didn't want to have this screwed up issue in my mind. I want to call what I saw in a real way. And as authentic as I could. So I didn't have anything to do with that. I think that was, I'm sure it was Rick and Terry, and I don't know that how plugged in Rick was on the pile driver spot on the table. I will say that, Conrad, it looks like that once again, Terry was a trendsetter. Look at tables now.
Oh yeah. Big time.
My friend, the Dudley boys,
I did okay with it.
Yeah, they made a living on the table. Devon, get the tables. And then you get all these other guys doing spots. You know, I've seen tables stacked up. You know, I always think of Terry. I said, well, Terry started this whole damn thing with one table. Now look where it's evolved to. So again, trendsetter, visionary, so many little things that were perceived to be little things have become a part of our culture now in pro wrestling.